Egemen Bagis, the Turkish ambassador to the Czech Republic and former Minister for EU Affairs. Mr. Bagis, thank you very much for joining us. I just want, if you please, just to give me your response now to the news that the Operation Spring Shield has officially been launched, and what you think will be the response from the European Union to what's happening in Idlib.
Well, Turkey has not surprised anyone. Turkey has been warning and sharing the information, and our president has been on the phone with presidents of the United States, with the Council of Europe, with European leaders and Russia. And Turkey has been hosting 2/3 of all Syrian refugees in the world for the last 5-6 years since the beginning of this crisis. But the crisis has taken a new turn since May of 2019, and the Assad regime has been much more bloody, killing their own citizens. We have, as we speak, more than 1 million people at our border close to Idlib, and Turkey naturally defends herself, defends the national interests of her citizens. And we have been trying to take care of 4 million refugees for the last several years. It is time for our European allies to understand what kind of problem we have been facing. And Turkey has been in continuous communication with all of her allies, neighbors, friends, and partners. But the regime and its backers continue to act in blatant breach of all of our previous agreements and declared ceasefires.
Mr. Bagis, what kind of response do you think you will get from EU leaders to this latest wave of migration that's coming from Turkey as a result of the fighting that's happening behind me there in Idlib?
Well, we have been asking them for their help and cooperation in handling these refugees. The solution is not for them to stay in Turkey. The solution is not for them to go to Europe either. But the solution is bringing a democratic regime in Syria, where these people can go back and rebuild their countries. The interim solution that we had proposed was to establish a security safety zone in the border between Turkey and Syria of 30 kilometers deep, where we could build some houses, some farms, some schools, and send these people back to start living in their own country and rebuilding their country and creating their own economy. But unfortunately, Turkey has been trying to attract attention to this proposal. Our European allies have been quite deaf and blind to our solutions, and they have not made any counter solution proposals. Now it's time for the world to realize that countries like Turkey, Jordan, and Lebanon are not capable of taking care of all these people on their own, and they need help. Especially Turkey has been spending more than $40 billion, and we just cannot afford to do any more. It is time for our European allies to come up with some ideas on how to solve this problem. And the most important solution would be bringing democracy back to Syria.
And what do you put it down to, the reasons to why it seems like the migrant crisis, the refugee crisis, has somehow slipped from the agenda of some of these European capitals? On what account do you think there is that there seems to be such little planning, forward planning, to try and solve a crisis that really never went anywhere and was always there?
Well, they are preoccupied with their upcoming elections, with their internal issues, with their own national interest. But it is time that they realize that nobody is safe until everybody is safe. Nobody is secure until everybody is secure. And nobody can be comfortable until everybody has a house and shelter. So we have to find a solution to this crisis. The Syrian people that are taking a huge risk to go to Europe at the border is not only a concern for Turkey, it should also be a concern for humanity. This is the largest humanitarian crisis since the history of United Nations. And I think both UN, European Union, NATO, we all have to get together and find solutions for these millions of people to go back to their country in peace, without the fear of being killed by a dictator, who has been killing more than 1 million people already. It is time for the world to say stop. It is time for the world to stop this dictator from killing his own people. He has blood on his hands. More than 1 million people are dead because of him. So it's time for Assad to leave and democracy to come to Syria.
Mr. Bagis, are you concerned that there is not enough international support for the situation in Idlib? There has been perhaps warm words, but perhaps not as full-throated as many people expected there to be for what happened to the Turkish armed forces just a couple of days ago and what is happening currently.
Well, as you mentioned a couple of days ago, we lost more than 40 of our sons, our soldiers, who were killed by the brutal attacks of the bloody dictator regime of Damascus. If it was any other NATO member country's sons, the reaction would be much faster, much concrete, and much more decisive. Turkish nation has been losing patience over this passive attitude. And we have realized that we have to act on our own. Unfortunately, our allies have not been there as much as we have been for them in all of the international crises. We've been fighting together with all of our NATO allies since the Korean War. We've been together in every international conflict. We have had martyrs who lost lives for our common values like democracy, human rights, freedom of speech, free market economy in Korea, Kosovo, Somalia, Afghanistan, Iraq. And it's time for our allies to come to our help and stop our country being attacked. They're so obvious that Syria is being divided, and we have to stop it because that's what we all stand for. We all should support the territorial integrity of Syria, and the Syrian people should be encouraged to go back and rebuild their democracy and rebuild their country.
And what do you put this passivity down to? Is it just a fact that these organisations, be it NATO, the United Nations, the European Union, are perhaps at this current time in history just not fit for purpose and unable to actually perform the roles that they were designed to do?
Well, as I said, maybe they're lacking strong leadership. Maybe they are preoccupied with their other concerns. But it's time that they realize there's a huge crisis, and this is one of the largest movement of humans in history. I mean, we have 4 million Syrians already in Turkey. There is another 1.5 million at the border trying to come in. And these people all dream of going to Europe. It is time to create a new dream for them, to give them a new hope. And that hope, that new dream, should be in their own country, not somewhere else.
Okay, Ambassador Egemen Bagis, thank you very much for joining us on TRT World. Appreciate your time and your insight. Okay.